One question for me is like, how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden, well, the president of the United States?
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be like a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue was like the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it.
And I can't stress to you enough.
Like Joe Biden's chief of staff, like had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
That was like an open secret at the level. Like, I would avoid him. Like, he was scary.
What was his name?
Anthony Trump.
I've never seen him.
Exactly.
What do you mean?
He's like a shadowy, like, Wizard of Oz type figure. That's what made him so, like...
So for some time now, we've been covering the chronicle of David Hogg and the internal civil war happening in the Democrat Party right now over basically the core question really revolves around how do we move forward after the 2024 election. Of course, David Hogg notably did so by saying that, look, a lot of these old geriatric establishment politicians have to be primaried out of the party. And despite whatever criticisms or flaws that I and many others would have about David Hogg, there is a legitimate point in the sense that the moment he said that, right, the establishment, Hakeem Jeffries, Pelosi, everyone, all these characters got visibly offended. Of course, James Carville may be the most of all, right? The greatest icon of a geriatric Democrat who is like 80,000 years old, doesn't know when to give it up. But anyways, they've been in this circle of chaos. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it would appear that civil war has turned out into full out internal collapse. The situation over at the DNC is dire. It's like Rome in 476 AD, because you have, ladies and gentlemen, not just the vice chair of the DNC, David Hogg, now getting fired, right? He is officially ousted as of tonight. We'll give you that update. But apparently at the same time, we have the main chair of the DNC caught on tape here. This is a recording that was released by Politico, literally crying on camera. Okay, he's crying in this meeting with David Hogg, having this total meltdown, also saying that he does not really want to do this anymore because David Hogg, in this effort to basically divide the party, do the primary challenges, all this stuff, has put, apparently, according to Ken Martin, so much pressure on him that he genuinely is considering hanging up the gloves and retiring from politics. Of course, Ken Martin is the same guy who was brought on at the DNC to basically be a new face, right? The fresh new reformer. He comes from Minnesota. He is essentially one of Tim Walz's BFFs. And so there's this hope, hey, he comes from like a semi-Rust Belt state. He understands. He's not this coastal elite. This is the guy, right? Ken Martin's going to reform our image. Apparently now Ken Martin is completely admitting that he's lost control of the situation. He's crying on camera. David Hogg now been ousted. It is total chaos. We got to tell you all about that in today's video, and I'll try my best to put together a very complicated situation as best I can. But with that said, guys, before we get into that, do us a big favor here. If you enjoy the content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is not only the best way to support our work and our videos on this side, but also for you to stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, okay, so before we get into the story again, David Hogg, it is official now. After many party votes, committees, all this stuff, tonight he has had his election voided formally as the DNC Vice Chair in a party-wide vote. We got to start here with the story of Ken Martin. Okay, so long story short, some of you guys might be asking who even is Ken Martin. So Ken Martin is the main boss at the DNC, right? This is the primary chair, right? David Hogg there is obviously the vice chair, like an assistant or whatever, okay? And again, as I said here, Ken Martin is a guy who was elected with some degree of enthusiasm in the Democrat Party because people saw him as like, look, he's a grassroots figure. He's kind of sort of an outsider, right? Again, someone here who can really reform our party and to take us to the promised land. And as you can see, just in the span of, guys, the DNC election was in February. So that is about 4 months, a little less than 4 months. That happened fast. We're not even at the 2026 midterms yet, guys. The DNC, this again, like I said, this is how badly the party's imploding in on itself. 4 months in, the DNC vice chair privately told David Hogg in a meeting, quote, "You have essentially destroyed any chance that I have." And again, on this call is completely crying. Ken Martin expressed frustration and self-doubt in the meeting with other party leaders, according to a 2-minute recording that was obtained here by Politico. Now, with that said, we might as well just show you what happened in this tape. So again, this is the DNC vice chair, Ken Martin, literally like losing his mind, basically having a panic attack over the fact that, hey, David Hogg is tearing apart my party. He's been the Trojan horse, right? The Trojan horse of the woke kind of Gen Z mob side of the party has officially done us in, yeah, like I said, great state that the DNC is in. Totally prepared to take on the 2026 midterms, by the way. So anyways, that said, take a listen.
And I'll say, look, it has plenty of warts, and we're all trying to change those for sure. But the longer we continue this fight, the harder it is for us to actually do what we all want to do, which is make a difference in this country again. So I deeply respect you, David. I too was looking forward to working with you, but this has created a situation, and I'll be very honest with you, for the first time in my 100 days on this job, and Jessica knows this, the other night I said to myself for the first time, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And partly not because of the stress and all the naysayers, right? I'm used to that. I've spent 14 years as a chair. I'm used to getting beat up on. But, you know, this is really everything, you know, from this election, this credentials report, and how Malcolm's been treated in this, to, you know, the fact the election itself, how Shasti and Gina were treated in this. I'm just quite frustrated to be in this position, because what you've done, whether you like it or not, or know it or not, David, is no one knows who the hell I am, right? I'm trying to get my sea legs underneath of me and actually develop any amount of credibility so I can go out there and raise the money and do the job I need to put ourselves in a position to win. And again, I don't think you intended this, but you essentially destroyed any chance I have to show the leadership that I need to. So it's really frustrating. Jane.
Brutal, right, ladies and gentlemen? I think, frankly, brutal for multiple characters who are involved here. I mean, we'll talk about David Hogg in a second, but, you know, firstly, if you're familiar, right, with why Ken Martin is essentially melting down, this has not only stuff to do with, of course, David Hogg going out and saying that he wanted to primary other Democrats, right? He wanted to actually hold the establishment accountable, which, again, I have many criticisms, but to his credit, right, he is not entirely wrong in the sense that, hey, the geriatric Democrat politicians are not doing the party any favors. At the same time, I would argue that the young woke revolutionaries are not much better. Okay, we of course have David Hogg on camera endorsing characters like Jasmine Crockett, somehow thinking, oh, because they're younger and they're more vulgar and louder, that's better than like the old geriatric Joe Biden. No, I don't think that's the case. Nonetheless, we don't have to get into that. Okay, main point. Ken Martin is essentially so stressed over that, as well as the fact that largely, I would argue, as a byproduct of a lot of the things David has done, because of that, this effort, this DEI effort to basically get David's election redone over at the DNC that we've covered quite a bit, and we'll talk about here in a second, is also stressing him out, because essentially what he's saying is, look, the party is a mess. Translation, right? I don't want to do this job anymore because this party is a sinking ship. Everything's on fire. We can't get anything under control. And by the way, so many Democrats out there are saying, we're looking for strong, competent leadership, right? We need our leaders to be fierce and strong and fiery and warriors and all that stuff. And then the top warrior, who is supposed to be, of course, organizing everything for you guys, is crying. He's saying, guys, things are too chaotic. I can't control anything. I don't know what to do. I want to quit, guys. I want to quit. That's your fighter, by the way, Democrats. Again, Tim Walz' BFF here. Great position. As you can see, Politico has now reported that the DNC committee chair, Ken Martin, has told party leaders in a recent private conversation he's unsure about his ability to lead the party because of the infighting created recently by Vice Chair David Hogg. And that's why, in this sense, right, throughout this whole battle, I'm rooting for David Hogg, believe it or not. I never thought I would ever say that in my life, but in this case I am, because I want him, whether he succeeds or not, I want the chaos to ultimately tear apart the Democrat Party. And looks, guys, here, like that has been completely successful. You also have to question the motives of why this tape was released. You know, I think it could be two ways. Maybe perhaps David Hogg is releasing this to sabotage Ken Martin, or who knows, maybe Ken Martin's own people are releasing this because they want out of the party as well. I have no idea. I also don't know, for instance, where the DNC should go. or would go if Ken Martin is out at the party. I think from my understanding, the alternative for DNC chair would basically be someone like Rahm Emanuel, who managed the DNC under Obama. And if you remember Obama's performances in midterm elections, which were not very good, Rahm Emanuel just repeatedly led the DNC to massive humiliation and defeat. And so, again, considering that's basically the alternative here, really hope that Ken Martin, not a competent guy in himself, I wouldn't argue he's amazing in himself, but if the replacement alternative very likely will simply be someone worse, because listen to what Ken Martin is saying. You think anyone who is serious or credible or actually has better alternatives is going to want to lead the DNC right now? No, absolutely not. Nobody wants to lead the DNC right now, which again, when you look here, guys, I mean, just in our last, I think 2 videos ago, we talked about some of the 2026 polling, actually, because the Democrats have this perception, hey, they're headed to a blue wave. It's easy. The American people are so overwhelmingly against what Trump is doing. We showed the generic ballot at basically a tie between Republicans, Democrats, nationally speaking, popular vote, essentially close to tied. Democrats had basically a less than 1 point lead. In translation, that does not translate to a midterm victory for the Democrats at all, right? That means overwhelming, guys, here, considering the map Republican Senate victory. And even in the House, ladies and gentlemen, very little, that actually likely favors even the Republicans holding the House, which is a crazy concept to consider when you know that the House majority, again here, guys, already very slim and all that. But again, very bad news. Now with that in mind, okay, so we talked about the election. Again, as I'm going to reiterate here, not a free toss-up by any means for Democrats just because, midterm momentum or whatever. But on top of that, you are going, guys, into this election year with a party infrastructure that is completely disorganized, right? Keep in mind the DNC is responsible, for instance, for fundraising, all that stuff for the Democrat candidates. That is absolutely terrible for them, okay? And so, you talk about, the party ever going to rebuild itself? Clearly not, okay? Clearly, the situation is just getting even worse. Keep in mind, right? The Democrat Party basically internally collapsed after the November election. For it to collapse again, I mean, how much longer can you survive or be viable when your internal leadership is in this much chaos? But as you can see, right? The intra-party feud, Martin said on the recording, is making it more difficult for his party to do its work and has ruined its ability to demonstrate leadership. There you go. Hogg, of course, has ignited the firestorm in the party by vowing to spend $20 million in safe blue primaries to oust Democrat incumbents that he believes are ineffective. Martin paused twice while appearing to choke up. So there you go, right? Martin apparently, when asked for an interview, sent a statement through a spokesperson saying, quote, "I'm not going anywhere." Well, we'll see about that. "I took this job to fight Republicans, not Democrats. As I said when I was elected, our job is not to fight within the Democrat Party. Our job is and has been to be solely focused on Donald Trump and the disastrous Republican agenda." Well, keep in mind there, I think that's a very actually telling statement about the Democrats. There is no actual agenda themselves. It's just like Trump derangement syndrome. But, nonetheless there, who cares about that? Again, guys, our fight is not within the Democrat Party. To that, Ken Martin, I say, you're a little too late for that, ladies and gentlemen, don't you think? Now, with that said, that's the Ken Martin story. Again, main chair of the DNC. Let's talk now about the infamous and ridiculous, of course, famous gun control activist, none other than Mr. David Hogg himself, who somehow, some way, the Democrat Party, as I will once again reiterate and argue here, made the massive mistake they always do. This is what happens. The left cannibalizes itself because for Democrats for years have created this generation of activist revolutionary crazies, whether that's March for Our Lives or Antifa or Black Lives Matter or all these different movements, right? Palestine even, you could argue. And what inevitably happens as a result of them is they bring them in and embrace them, assuming, hey, this will be the militant opposition. This will basically be like the paramilitary arm of our party. So when they're protesting or rioting or doing crazy stuff or whatever they're doing, right, aggressively being in opposition to Donald Trump or the Republicans, everyone cheers, right? David Hogg, yay, AOC, yay, all these people, yay, Black Lives Matter, amazing movement, guys. Heck, the ICE protesters, right? They're so incredible and brave. But inevitably, what happens when you allow total lunatics into your party is past a certain point, you learn, hey, you can't actually control these people, right? You're not in control. They're destructive. That's all they do. And so essentially, right, the argument I made is that the DNC here, guys, basically brought in David Hogg thinking to themselves, okay, he's a Gen Z male. what's one of our biggest demographics we're hurting with right now. We're perceived as the old geriatric party, and Gen Z men specifically are leaving our party. But upon that happening, right, I think what the DNC was hoping here is, look, and this is a common theme I think you're seeing, is that the Democrat Party, the leadership at least, they're not interested in actual significant change, because the actual change would be, hey, you need new leadership, right? But they basically want to like put some polish, I guess, over the top of it to say, look, we're going to be the same party, but we're going to have better messaging, guys. We're going to go on Joe Rogan this time. We might stand for all the same stuff, same leadership, whatever, but Joe Rogan. But, look, our party leadership is younger now. But I think what they were hoping here out of David Hogg is he would basically be a useful idiot for their cause, because thus far, that's who he's been, right? Gun control, all that stuff, right? He was just this anti-Trump deranged activist. But ladies and gentlemen, what happens when you let the woke into the ranks is inevitably, again, they eventually turn on you. What has happened, I would argue, since is that by saying, hey, wait a minute, right? I'm a woke young activist. As a matter of fact, old establishment Democrat leadership, who in their eyes is like not fighting Trump hard enough, you guys are also the problem. In that case, right, what happened? David Hogg no longer became controllable, and the Democrat Party absolutely freaked the heck out about it. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, the news as of today, officially, guys, is David Hogg has been fired over at the DNC, as you can see, according here again to Politico. The DNC has just booted David Hogg and another vice chair from their roles. The decision comes amid internal strife at the National Committee. Now, with that said, we've covered this story for a long time, but if you're not familiar, you can go watch. But if not, okay. So long story short here, the reason this is happening, I kid you, at least the stated reason. I think the real reason, as I said, is they're trying to get Hogg out because he threatens like the establishment's grip over the party. But nonetheless here, the stated reason they are removing David Hogg from this position stems back to some type of like DEI quota. Kid you not, right? That's the party that's moving forward, by the way. Let's DEI our one of our top people. This DEI quota basically dating back to the original DNC elections, where we'll play this video again just so you can understand. There was like this massive confusion over the genders of the people you can elect and all this. And essentially, we'll just show it for you, right? This video right here is what caused all the confusion that we'll explain in a second. Again, this was the election for David Hogg and what was going down while he was being elected.
Rules specify that when we have a gender non-binary candidate or officer, the non-binary individual is counted as neither male nor female, and the remaining 6 offices must be gender balanced. With the results of the previous 4 elections, our elected officers are currently 2 male and 2 female. In order to be gender balanced, we must elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. So again, this is what we have to do for this vice chair race. We have to elect 1 male, 1 female, and 1 person of any gender. To ensure our process accounts for male, female, and non-binary candidates, we conferred with our RBC co-chair, our LGBT caucus co-chair, and others to ensure that the process is inclusive and meets the gender balance requirements in our rules. To do this, our process will be slightly different than the one outlined to you earlier this week, but I hope you will see that in practice it is simple and transparent. The order of balloting is designed to ensure equal access to the ballot, regardless of gender identity. As we must elect a candidate of any gender as well as 1 male and 1 female vice chair, we will first ask members to elect a candidate of any gender on the first ballot. Any candidate, male, female, and non-binary, can be elected on that ballot. After a candidate is elected on the first ballot, we'll have 1 officer of the 3. So then we will know which position is filled of the 1 male, 1 female, and 1 vice chair of any gender. Our second ballot would also be for a candidate of any gender. Then our third ballot will be the third position that is remaining based on the 2 results. Either a male candidate if a candidate that is not male has not been elected, or a female candidate if a female has not been elected.
Of course, it's typical Democrats, right? So nobody understands the election rules, okay? You can tell even he does not understand them. Nobody does, right? So there's all this stuff about like the gender balance, but male or female, whatever. Okay, to make a long story short, because of that, because they left the door open by being such ridiculous, silly clowns with all their DEI rules and all this stuff. To make a long story short, a Native American woman, a woman here who was apparently running for the same position as Hogg, brought this election challenge against Hogg and the other guy that is the vice chair here, Malcolm Kenyatta, for basically arguing that their election violated the very complicated, confusing, and nonsensical gender diversity rules that you heard about in that very clip right there. Okay, so basically the DNC, the argument here, conducted their election wrong. And the reason they conducted it wrong is because nobody understands the rules, guys. I've watched that same exact video like 5 different times because we've done a lot of videos on this DNC subject. I still don't understand what the actual gender rules are. But nonetheless, okay, essentially what happened. Okay, so this Native American woman brings a challenge against it. And then I would argue this, right? I think under normal circumstances, she might not be taken all that far. But because David Hogg is 2 things, first of all, a white male, a young white male, but also secondly here, I would also argue because he did that whole stunt standing up to the party leadership, now this effort got somewhere very serious, right? The committee voted yes, all that stuff. And as we advertised before, come the month of June, they were due for the party-wide vote on whether to void the election and host a new one in the process here, ousting those vice chair from those roles. And as you can see, according to Politico today, ladies and gentlemen, it is official that vote has passed. As I said before, right? He probably does not have a strong chance because he's pissed off so many people in the party. Here you go, guys. DNC boots David Hogg and another vice chair from their roles. The decision comes amid internal strife at the National Committee. DNC members removed David Hogg from his vice chair position, discharging the 25-year-old activist and another vice chair from the National Party post amidst his threats to, quote, take on ineffective Democrat incumbents in the primaries. The virtual vote, which concluded on Wednesday and the results were obtained by Politico, vacated its 2 vice chair positions stemming from a procedural complaint unrelated to Hogg's primary activities and put forth a plan to now hold a new election. Hogg and Malcolm Kenyatta must now run again for their positions next week. Yeah, let me ask you this question right here. First of all, they say it was unrelated to Hogg's primary activities. Yeah, I guess you could say that's technically true. But we understand too, this is kind of like a Me Too almost situation. This is where you weaponize something against someone to get them out because of another ulterior reason, because you can't directly say, oh, we're going to take David Hogg out because he's asking too many questions about our power. No, you invent some other thing against him right there, number one. And I think number two, other question I have, do you really think David Hogg will get reelected next week? I don't think so. Again, the vote here, guys, was apparently 294 to 99 to redo this election. Why do you think that is? It's because David Hogg has virtually no friends left in the Democrat Party. In April, as you may remember, as we talked about, right, Hogg announced that the group he co-founded, Leaders We Deserved, planned to drop $20 million on safe seat Democrat primaries, hoping to oust, quote, asleep-at-the-wheel Democrats. This move triggered a wave of anger from elected officials and DNC members alike who vented that Hogg's role as a party leader conflicted with the decision to take on those very incumbents. The internal drama exploded when, of course, Politico, as we talked about earlier, reported on leaked audio from a DNC meeting in which Chair Ken Martin told David Hogg and other DNC leaders that his leadership had suffered due to the clash. The vice chair, as we brought up, had essentially said he destroyed any chance I have to show national leadership. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Great political party these people have. On one hand, they're DEIing the top vice chair, but also the main chair himself is saying, I don't want to do this anymore. David Hogg is fired. Total freaking chaos. Grab your popcorn. We love to see it. With that said, though, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. And frankly, like, whose side? I mean, I think we're all just rooting for the chaos here. But principally speaking, whose side are you on? Because I think on one hand, David Hogg's an idiot. On the other hand, it's also true here. The party leadership here basically just pushed him out because they felt threatened. At the same time, you know, it's like, I think on one hand, without Hogg kind of doing his threats, yes, the party will be more unified, but you're going to be more unified on what, right? On a more unpopular message, on even older, more aging geriatric politicians? It's really hard to say. But again, we're here for the chaos. With that said, though, guys, let me know your thoughts. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.